This is Mrs. Skatnicki here, and I hope you're doing well. I hope you're staying safe and staying socially distanced. I am recording this today because this next part of the senior thesis is a valuable one, but it's a little bit complex to figure out this chart unless you see an example of it beforehand. So what I'll be taking you through is the topic exploration, and as you can see here, your goal really with this topic exploration is not to start doing research per se, but to get the big picture of what information exists about your topic and what different angles you might choose to take. Because once you start to see what the possibilities are, you may find that you are more interested in one angle or another, or perhaps you'll decide that your topic wasn't what you thought it was to begin with. But at any rate, you're going to need some tools handy, and I've given you some links here, which I have open as tabs at the top of my screen. The first of this is the Database Shopping Mall handout, and this was created by Ms. Nays, and what it shows you is how topics are organized in the library, and the fancy library term is the classification. So one of the things that you are asked to do on this worksheet is determine what classification your topic falls under. And some topics will be one topic, sort of one classification only, but some of them might be more than one. My guiding question, and I've kind of started filling out this sheet for the purposes of this demonstration, is how are cell phones affecting student learning in the classroom environment? All right, so I'm going to jump back over to this database shopping mall, and I can see here as I scroll through these topics that here's education. And so clearly, if I'm talking about classroom environment, education is part of that. So I would then jump back over to my version of this sheet and I would type in education. The other classification that I've chosen is computer science and technology because we are dealing with just that. Next step then is to decide, based upon this shopping mall, where you want to start searching. Now, my preference actually is to come to the second page of this database shopping mall document, and I start here with these broad ones of ProQuest and SIRS Knowledge Source. In my experience, I always get good results from these two, mostly because they're such big databases. So then what I need to do is go to them, all right? And so and I'm going to come down here, and it doesn't really matter which one I choose, but if I start with SIRS here, I have already logged in to SIRS, and so therefore the computer just jumped right in for me. But what you may find the first time you log in is that you need to type in a password, all right? So interestingly, when I went to go to SIRS, what came up for me was ProQuest, and so I had to type in the ProQuest username and then password. But then it got me home, and then I see here that SIRS and ProQuest are now the same, under the same umbrella. So I'm going to click on SIRS, and then I'm going to do a keyword search, all right? And that's going to help me of course, sort of get this big picture. I'm going to start broadly with my searching, which means I'm going to not do too many words with my search. I'm going to try to keep it as minimal as possible. And notice that there's all kinds of things that come up here as suggestions. And you're certainly free to try them, but I want to try my search first. So just to see. And what I'm looking for really are two things. First of all, the number of results for cell phone and student, that particular keyword search, and then whether or not those results are useful. And so as I scan through these, they do look like they'd be helpful, right? All right, so I'm getting some information there. So, but that's an awful lot of results, 1,442. So I'm going to record it in my search field here, and then I'm also going to record my initial search, and I'm going to then evaluate that and say, well, it's sort of what I'm looking for, all right? because it's so many articles. I don't want to scan through almost 1,500 articles. So I'm going to show you a couple tricks, which I have already written in for the purposes of speeding this video up. One is to use quotation marks around a phrase. And what that forces a search engine to do is search for the two words together. So if I take basically my same search there, cell phone and student, what happens then is it drops the search results down to 609, presumably because we're not getting articles about cell biology and whatever. But still, 609 is quite a few results. So then I want to try to narrow that down even further. So I add another term, right? So I'm using basically the same model that I started with, but I get more and more refined as I go. And so this time when I did cell phone, student, and added learning at the end, I came up with 155. Well, that's still quite a few articles, but I can skim through those titles and pick out the ones I like. One other thing I will encourage you to do, and that's what led me to add my fourth search here, which wasn't really part of this form, but you are welcome to do so, was I went back to my crowdsourcing document and I took a look to see some of the keywords that others had come up with for me, and I noticed that distraction was one of them. I also noticed that I like the word regulated, so I might do additional searches, right, based on those keywords just to see, right? Now that may come later, but again, all I'm doing is writing down numbers. I'm not really looking so far into like reading articles or taking notes or any of that stuff yet. Right now, I just want to see kind of big picture results of what this stuff looks like. On the second page of this, I ask you to do some of the same things, but using Google News. And for those of you who don't know, Google News is a nifty feature of Google's basically itself, that what the Google search engines do is instead of searching everything on the World Wide Web, they're simply searching news sources. So you can be better assured, and I won't say 100% because there are some really sort of rinky-dink news sources out there that I wouldn't trust, but it gives you at least a little bit closer to some real news sources. So for example, as I'm looking down here, the Colorado Sun is something I recognize. There's a lot of news stations. I don't know about that. Indiana Daily Student, I would look into that mostly because it's a student newspaper. I'm sort of curious. But Forbes I recognize, right? And so I'm being sort of choosy here, and I'm seeing if I recognize the news source. Oh, Kaiser Health News, sure. The Independent, that's out of Great Britain. The New Yorker, right? But at any rate, what I'm looking to do also is to see, okay, well, am I finding articles here? Now, Google News doesn't tell me a number, so when I jump back over to my document here, I can say that it wasn't stated, and that's okay, all right? But is it what I'm looking for? I'm not actually sure that was a total yes. It was sort of a sort of. Most of the articles seem to be about coronavirus, but that's the way things are going right now. Step number 3 is to do a little self-evaluation based, once you have everything complete, based upon what you have discovered about researching your topic. And is this the direction you want to go? Do you think your topic is too narrow, too broad, just right? And then of course, the last piece I'll ask you to do, and you can take a look at my example to see that as well when I post it, is to highlight your most successful searches. And the reason for that is because that's going to help you remember which keyword combinations were the most valuable for you to do, right? Because it's an easy thing to forget because you get distracted, right? You'll be reading about these articles even though you're not really meaning to do so yet, but the information is so interesting, and then what search did I do and which database was it in? So by doing this log, and I'll start with SIRS, I'll go to ProQuest, and then I will jump back over to the database shopping mall, and I'm going to look at some of these here, facts on file, opposing viewpoints, right, and perhaps even CQ Researcher to see also what they have about my topic. Those are going to be much more specialized, so I don't expect I'll get as many results, but that's okay too, just to get sort of the big picture. So that's the goal for this activity. The topic exploration is to see big picture, what information is out there, which will the best resources be for you, and then from there, that's when you start reading and taking notes. All right, thanks. Take care. Have a good evening.